So we're thinking about mission, specifically Christian mission, and we're thinking about that in relation to Jesus and when he's invited out to dinner. And there he's told, he actually tells the host of the dinner party, you really should be inviting people here who aren't expecting to be invited. Don't invite people who you're hoping to get something back from, but people who can't give you anything in return. And one of the guests, I think, senses some tension in the room and he tries to kind of smooth things over a little bit. And then Jesus tells a story about someone who was giving a party and he invites a bunch of people. But they all come up with excuses, right? I've got a field to see to, I've got some oxen over there, I've got to look after, I'm getting married. So they all come up with their excuses. And then he says, well, you know what? He says to his servants, go out into the highways and the byways. Go and find the poor and the crippled and the lame and bring them. And then he says, compel them to come here. Those folks who are invited, they're not going to taste of my feast. So just think, as we think about that and think about Christian mission, what does that say to us as we think about Christian mission?
I think, when I first read this story this week, it struck me that it wouldn't have been, while he did say, compel them to come, I want them all to sit at my table, it would have still been, I would think, very far outside of the host's comfort zone. Because he invited his friends originally, right? Like his comfort zone, he wanted to be with his friends. And then they can't show up, but he's already prepared this feast, so he's like, well, bring them all in. And I think, as we think about inviting people into our space, into our homes, into our lives, who we don't know, who are so different from us, I think it's going to involve a step outside of that comfort zone, and that it might, Jesus kind of made it seem easy, like, well, just fill up the table, but to acknowledge that that's not an easy step, but that there's so much blessing and fruit that can come from those opportunities, or we may never see that fruit.
And I'll add, you may remember, Jen, you gave me a book a long time ago about the butterfly effect. Mm-hmm. And what you discover is what you've already mentioned, and that is if you will become that movable feast that goes out to people who are far from God and impacts their life, you don't know what that life will do. Mm-hmm. And the impact it can have. And it may be an immediate impact on somebody else, or it could be a generational impact, that somewhere generations down the line, that person that you brought that movable feast to, that person that you brought the gospel of Christ to, changes something that has impacts beyond what you can imagine. It has that ripple effect, or the butterfly effect from that little book.
And I think there's also something in what happens here that calls us to be intentional. We sort of use that word from time to time, but I think it calls us to really think about our focus. Jesus says to the guy who's throwing the feast, he says, this feast should be thrown for people who you wouldn't normally expect to be here. And I think sometimes we can kind of let life happen a little bit, just kind of let it happen, and as things happen, well and good. But I think there's a call to be a bit more intentional about it than that, and really be asking the question, God, who do you want me to be inviting around my table?
But I think that when you ask God to use you, when you want to be obedient to Him, He's going to lead you to people that will be outside your comfort zone.
I had an experience when I was in college where I was rooming next door to this girl who was clearly just, her parents had made her come to a Christian college and she did not want to be there. But, throughout the year, I just kept trying. I just kind of pop in, say hello, and, invite her to lunch or whatever, and she just no. And I in that moment, that was outside of my comfort zone, because it was clear that there was a wall of opposition. And doesn't necessarily happen in this story, but that does happen as we extend hospitality to people who aren't expecting the invitation, or might not even want it, but might show up kind of grumbling. We might never see the fruit, and I never saw necessarily any fruit from that pursuit or that relationship that I was seeking out with her, but it's planting those seeds of when you go outside your comfort zone, you might not see that kind of come to fruition, but it's still a faithful practice to do it anyway.